Welcome to the DNA of Grace. So, we are continuing in this series called What is Christianity? This is the second part of it. So, we talked about God's creation in the first part, and this has 7 parts, and we're going to continue on it. And I hope you enjoy it because this I want to bring about what God did after a commandment of God was broken. So we first part of it we discussed that God created man in His own image. Now God put couple of things. He created a garden, and if it's in the book of in the Bible, book of Genesis, first chapter 1 and 2 and 3, and this whole story is there. But God created a garden and put Adam, his first creation, on the realm of the earth in the natural. He put him in there, and he said, attend to the garden and look after it. So the garden had its own things growing out of, he made things to grow from the trees which had seed and so on. When you read it, you kind of understand it. And today we live it, the same concept. And Adam, and then God gave him a compatible another person because he was alone. He didn't want him to be alone, so he gave him a compatible partner that he could live with Adam. And she was taken out of Adam, and so they became one. And if you really read it, I understand Adam said, "This is my bone of my bone, and this is same." So Adam did not see any difference between the two. Now that was the plan. But God put two trees in the garden that had life. One tree was called the tree of life, that he could eat of it and sustain himself to the nourishment. There were other trees too, but to have life, this life is a representation of God, because God is life, and he could have his nourishment to sustain life, not to sustain the body only, that you can eat and drink and other things, but sustain life in the realm of the spirit and the realm of his soul. Now these are three realms coming together in one person and operating on earth. Now Eve was the same, but God put another tree saying the knowledge of good and evil. Now I want to mention it here. For God to put plant that tree, the knowledge of good and evil, God knew what is good and evil meant. So otherwise he won't put it, right? You won't plant it. So, but God gave instruction, don't eat of it, don't eat of that tree, but the day that you eat of it, you will surely die. The thing is, why would God do it? Because God wanted Adam to have the same thing that God had, free will. Now that's why the free will is so important in the eyes of God, that each individual is given it, right? We know that we have the free will to choose. But anyway, as we go down the story, we see that Adam was living with Eve, but there was another entity which fell onto the earth, and that person was a spirit, and that spirit manifested on earth and came as a serpent, approached Eve and tried to give Eve the desire. He manipulated Eve to give a desire that she already had actually, but this entity showed that a side that she might not have. That's why it's called manipulation. That person used the manipulative words to show Eve that he could be like God. Actually, Eve was already like God. Eve didn't have to know that. But nevertheless, Eve did not know the knowledge of good and evil. Now, God, interesting thing is, God, in a way, free will was there, but God did not want them to know knowledge of good and evil, because there was a trap in it. So, because God knew it, but God was not brought into captivity by the knowledge of good and evil. Now, when Eve ate it, nothing happened to her, but she gave it to Adam, where the whole thing that God has said not to eat, because the instructions and the command was given to Adam. I can't say a command because it was not a term that military term. It is a military term, but it was not the term that God used with Adam. God said, "Do not eat of it," like a father says, right? But Adam ate it, and then that he was to eat from the tree of life got cut off, because he ate from this tree, which is that brought him into captivity, into slavery, because whatever that he is, the nourishment is coming through to your soul, to your spirit, because it's the realm of the spirit and the realm of the soul. Now, this tree is in the natural, but God's words in the spirit. So this source of nourishment from the tree of life got cut off, and he got grafted into a different tree, which brought him completely subjected to that tree. The knowledge of, not the physical tree, but that what that tree represented. So that way he became a slave to it, the knowledge of good and evil. Now we know the story when God came to see him, and they realized they were naked and God had to do something. God actually, the first thing God did was cover them with the blood, because they have died, separated from the spiritual realm from God, and got separated into a different realm, different entity that is called death. So it became death and continued to death. That way of life and existence. Life is the tree of life, but existence, that what we do. And it kept on becoming more and more intense, and more into slavery and into bondage. Now that is the fall that took place because of disobedience. But there were two things that which are a major part of it. One thing, he broke what God said not to do. He broke his word and he did it. Now that is punishable. That is breaking a law of God. And the second one is what happened by doing it became the fruit of it. Death came, and into his spirit, into his soul, and into his body. And in the body you have death and sickness, disease, and in our soul, in our minds, in our then we have bitterness in our soul, and fear, anger, jealousy, you name, all those things are in our soul. And now we are learning in the natural that mental illness has become a very big thing in today's life, and awareness is coming around. And because the people are unable to hold on to the thought patterns, and they are randomly having issues, and all these are getting confused, and everything is getting into each other's realm and making a big mess, and the bodies are reacting, and we see all this came from there. So we see that disobedience played a major part. Now we are reaping those results over so many generations, and but that's the fall of man. So this is how this whole thing has to be brought it back to the original, but this is continuing still, and there's more to it than God had a plan, and this is how it is. This is a plan, and there are no randoms.